Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. Be sure to subscribe, review, and share the episode. You can follow me on social media at Galen Trombley. I hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Please hold for a very important message. Light speed sequence initiated. How may I help you?
Bonjour.
Security breach.
The truth shall set you free. Awesome. It's a miracle.
Stabilize. 3, 2, 1. Mission complete.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Welcome, everybody. This is episode 212 of the Galen Trombley Show. My guest today is, I'll go CJ. Is that better?
Yeah, that works.
Chris James, who goes by CJ, owner of One Up Arcade and Pub in Plattsburgh. A little housekeeping. Chris walks in. He said this is his first podcast, and I said that they all are worse than this one. It was kind of being tongue-in-cheek because we just moved office spaces, and we're actually in my new office that Chris helped me take the couch down off the table. So you can tell that this has not been used yet.
So it's a lovely couch, by the way.
Lovely couch, same couch as before. But we will have a dedicated podcast studio, currently not in there right this second, but will be hopefully within the month. So this is kind of like an under construction podcast, a lot going on. So we kind of found one of the quieter spots of the building. But I think we'll be fine.
It's super quiet in here, super nice. Really great space. It feels warm and inviting, even with no pictures on the wall. At least the couch matches the wainscoting on the side, and
that's it.
It's a safe space.
That's what I was going for. So perfect. I like that. And so CJ, for people that do not know who you are, who are you? How'd you get to be the owner of One Up Arcade and Pub?
Disclaimer: so my wife is the owner. I'm in the kitchen making French fries, things of that nature. But we started out. Jill and I met back in 1998. Always been kind of a large child, so throughout the years I've been collecting arcade cabinets. And I don't know if you know anything about arcade cabinets, but they're not small. So there becomes a point where you can only fit so many in your house before you have to make a decision either to get rid of them or do something with them. So the idea was to open up a pub, a restaurant, an arcade kind of combination. So we signed a lease in December of 2018 at 22 Brinkerhoff and began to work on that location. It was the previous location of SIP. Kyle and Dean were in that space, and we started to do all the work. Wanted to do something different, something more fun. Tired of the reports, the paperwork, the things with working for somebody else that you have. You know, you're looking at being a 9-to-5 scenario where this was something that was more passionate. Also, our son Lucas turned 18 this year. He's on the autism spectrum, so it was nice to be able to provide a safe environment for him to work at and to start a family business, to be able to try. So at the end of the day, we would be together and also building something for the future that we'd hoped that everyone else in the area would begin to enjoy as well.
So I guess what was was it just your love of games? That was what kind of drew you out to make this kind of bar?
Well, I mean, that and food. I really like food as well. Being able to have access to, video games and food. I mean, it's like if you went in there, it would be my ideal bedroom if I would have had unlimited income at the age of 14.
Okay.
That's really what the pub is. Giant
full
artwork.
Kitchen.
Yeah, full kitchen. TVs on, games in there, French fries, milkshakes. I mean, it's literally the dream of a 14-year-old.
So I was going to say, this is kind of like you living vicariously as your 14-year-old, but now in your older self, and says listen, I can actually financially do this and legally do this.
Yep.
Now we're above 18. So,
yep.
Now when you talk games, they're called cabinets.
Yeah, it's arcade cabinets. So
I mean, I'm assuming that's the game itself.
Yeah. So it's the structure. So that's what way back before the internet, before everything else, the way that these games were put out to society was through an actual location, kind of like how movies were dispersed through the movie theater, right? So now everything, I mean, you can play unlimited amount of games on your phone, but yet there's still something different about being able to walk in and hearing the sounds and the lights of the arcade cabinets. So they used a CRT type television, which is very big, very heavy, like you probably had in your parents' or grandparents' house, and These were put into location. There were several of them. Ironically, there was an arcade right down the road on Brinkerhoff originally that was there decades ago. And so we're 3 doors down from that location. What happened was like anything else, they started to be phased out with other things, or people were entertaining themselves with the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis as systems were made available for
household
home use.
ones.
Yeah. And then, so these things became more readily available for a while. We've been kind of searching and collecting them since early 2000. So we would find them not working. We'd bring them back to life. And then, they kind of were considered obsolete because then redemption games became more popular in the industry, to where you get your tickets and then you'd go to the back of the arcade and you'd exchange them for some kind of gift. And so your traditional coin-fed games kind of went to the wayside. So we would purchase those and collect them at first. It was fun to work on them and bring them back to life. And then like I said, it turned into like having 1 or 2 was acceptable. Then next thing you know, you've got 18 of them. What do you do with them, right?
So when you talk about bringing them back to life, like what's the extent of that?
It's basically.
I mean, these are like dead. These things that won't turn on. But
some are fine. Some are like, if you were to read back through, you'd find that they were never designed to last 30, 40 years. So I've got arcade cabinets in there that are from 1979 that are working. Sometimes we can replace the capacitors on the board. That's what stores the electricity in the board to allow the picture to be shown. There's other portions where we're able to fix it and bring it back. Sometimes that's not possible, so we replace the screen with like an LCD screen to show the video. But for the most part, we try to restore them back to their original form.
And I get, like, where did you learn how to do that? Is that just like, did you have that background, or is that something you learned? Is that like a YouTube video you watched? Or
well, no. Like I said, it predates. So growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, so when we broke something, we had to fix it before mom and dad got home. So that's where a lot of it came out of necessity of not wanting to get in trouble. So, and then curiosity. So so go to yard sales and buy a radio that's like $2, and then dad says, go ahead and this is yours to do with what you wish. And then I was taking them apart to see, like, how does this work? Like, where is the solder points? How do I increase the amps? How do I make it louder? How do I add another speaker? So it was just trial and error for it. And then obviously later on in life, there was going to school for degrees and such. So I do have a background in engineering. I have a engineering degree, a bachelor's degree in that, but that's not like it. The two combined together in order to find something that was of interest. But it it came from just like trial and error,
So, no, I just think that's like when you hear like people bringing them back to life, and it's a very like niche thing. It's not like everybody's got these lying around that people just know how to fix them. So
right.
It's just cool to see. I went to I've been to 2 different ones in other cities. One was called Barcade.
Yeah.
Is that a franchise?
Yeah, that's trademark. So interesting story. So
okay.
Not knowing anything about opening a business, a few years back, with the original article that ran was with the Press Republican, and our landlord Pete, he was like, the Press Republican really wants to do an article with you. This is back in 2019. So me just being a complete moron for a time being, I was like, I'm thinking, okay, it's the paper. Like, how many people are getting the paper? Completely forgetting about the fact that it has a complete online presence, right? So I do this, and I'm having the conversation with the lady that's writing it, and she references it as Barcade, and I said that's a trademark name that they have, but it's a chain of them down in New York City. So I'm like, you can't use that terminology. I mean, you can say it. I'm hoping that this doesn't work. But what happened with the Press Republican is that they ran the article and they used that name, and then, no exaggeration, the next day they got a cease and desist letter from Barcade in the city. So, wow. Yeah, I mean, it's a common thing. It's a pretty simplistic thing. You take the letter B and you put it in front of Arcade. I mean, but yeah, it's trademarked to theirs. But it's been kind of like the common thing. It's like the Crescent wrench, right? So it's an adjustable wrench is the name of it, but everybody calls it Crescent, and Crescent is the brand. So yeah, that's how that works with.
So if anybody's been to a barcade, I mean, it's the same exact thing, but it's like the same concept. It's you got the games. I don't think they have food at barcade.
No, that's where ours differs. I was
going to say, yeah.
I've been to a lot of them as well. There's a great place over in Burlington called the Archives, where they have games, pinball machines, but they're pretty much just drinks. I mean, I think they have cheese and crackers or something like that, but we had envisioned it. To be honest, the idea was to be able to open up a restaurant without the pressure behind it, right? So if you have the arcade games, you're distracted when you go in there, and then if the food's quality, it's like a surprise or a bonus. So we always envision like combining the two things, because if you remember back in the day with arcades, like the big no-nos was no food, no drinks, right? Mm-hmm. So like I have pedestals next to each arcade cabinet where you can bring your drink over and play the game. So it was the whole defying the rules that were set up as us as kids.
Yeah, well, like I said, both times, like, one of the ones I went in was in Massachusetts, and I don't think it was called Barcade. It was something different, but the same thing. Like you went late in the night, and there was drinks kind of getting thrown around. So I think that's, like I said, the rule has been broken, which is probably a good rule nowadays.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, do you think, when most of these games came out, you said late 70s into the 80s?
I mean, that's like when was the first original games came out then. So I have new games all the way up to 2017. I have a Silver Strike Bowling that's in there, that's popular, but just trying to have more of the older games from the 80s, 90s, 2000s in that range.
Because, I got to think, like, a lot of stuff you see, like, people always talk, like, fashion comes back in cycles. It comes back in, like, a, full circle, but I think, was it every 20, 30 years? But if you think about that, that's like when younger people grow up and then have kids and then kind of, like, repeat that. And I think this thing is the same with, like, you just saw, like, Pokemon cards really start to take off again. And that, when I was a kid, that was when the original Pokemon cards started to come out, was when that first wave, and they got banned from all the schools because all the kids would trade them. But now it's like full circle. So those are now like collector's items. Like this obviously probably has done almost 2 cycles, but really a big cycle because, like, again, your generation that grew up playing these games or soon after, I find that you take, like, I still love Nintendo 64. Like that was like my childhood. And you had some before that, like I kind of knew, but they were, I was born in the late 80s. So like for me, N64, like you can get all the new bells and whistle games out there. Like I still want N64. I still want to play Mario Kart. So I think you get that nostalgia aspect, which I'm assuming is like a major target market. Plus, obviously, kids going in and looking at it, because I think vintage is starting to come back and retro stuff, and people are, from a younger generation looking at that stuff and probably thinking that it's like cool and new, and then they realize it's 40 years old.
Yeah. So we have, the thing is what it does is it jars memories, and it's very, in a good way, emotional for people to be like, I remember that. So I remember going into the arcade, and you have a story of my dad used to bring me, my uncle used to bring me, my sister used to bring me. And some of those things, like the shooting games that we have now, like Area 51, is super popular. People just like to come in and do that, or play Miss Pac-Man or Galaga and have the joystick as opposed to, the thumb, the paddle. So there's room for all of it. And what it does is it allows for places like we're 100% kid friendly. So at all times that we're open, and it's nice to be able to have, as a parent, when you have a kid and you go out to a restaurant, there's this like anxiety of like, you got to sit there and be quiet.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
I'm living it right now.
Yeah. So, but you come to our place, no one's going to bat an eye. Your kid can run around, start slapping around the Miss Pac-Man buttons, and like that's just what it's there for. We have a bunch of table games that are free, like whether it's I've got a 1978 Hungry Hippo that takes a pounding, and like it's just strong, right? So people love it. They come in there, anything from 6-year-olds playing to like 45-year-olds that are playing. Like, so it's just all that stuff's there to be able to have a cool place to hang out. And
so, and I know I was like reading, obviously you have a lot of games. You put what probably 10 to 12 out at a time?
Yeah, there's like 13 out there right now. I've rotated them out each month. I try to like switch some games out because the space is limited currently for that, and to not be stagnant with the titles, I'm conscious about trying to move things out.
Well, I think it also, there's something about the limited aspect too when it comes out, like kind of like seasonal, or like, hey, I'm going to put this like, whether it's a sports game or whether it's like maybe, I don't know, do you have Duck Hunter?
We have Duck Hunt. Yeah, we have I haven't put it in yet, but
But if you like during hunting season, like like I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but like you get like ones where I think that people would. It's almost like having a certain flavor or certain coffee at like like only a seasonal thing. Like I think people would come purely because like they only get it in maybe the fall,
Which we and you're 100% right, because that's what I've done. So like, and there's one spot. Have you been into the establishment?
I've walked by it. My assistant Jen, she's been a couple times and like raves about it. Like I know the concept of it. And I've seen it from the outside. I have 3 young children, so I don't get out. That's what I'm saying. Right. I'm living with the.
How old are your kids?
My oldest is going to turn 5 on Christmas Day. So,
okay.
Yeah, so they're all little people, but he probably would go there because at this point he could probably hang enough to hit the buttons and stuff.
Well, we're conscious of it. Like I said, we're like funny part is when we open this up, like you have these ideas about a business and there's all kinds of things you can look at and you can get help and you can get advice. But one of the things that we've struggled with is getting the word out that we are 100% kid friendly. Because I think from whatever predeceived or notion that people had was that, okay, it's a bar, like they're looking for, it's 21 and up. Like we still get those questions after being open for nearly 7 months of that. So we have the step stools in there for little guys like yours that we can get them up to where they can see the screen and everything.
Well, I was gonna say, and I'm guessing based on the name, like arcade and pub, the arcade's the forefront, pub is kind of the secondary.
Yeah, and again,
from marketing or from a
like disclosing, like if I was to advise you and we were to open up another place or do it again, I think I would just call it restaurant. And then when people came in, they would be like, "Oh wow, you got arcade cabs." But at the same time, it was finding our footing on that and the arcade part. It's just in the naming. I mean, I think it could be just one up after a while. We're at the arcade bar or something. People just call it different things.
Yeah.
But the ability to have the kids in there is really like the fun part, to see them running around.
And when you said like your son works there, and who else? I mean, is it mostly family that you guys?
Yep. So it's my wife and I are there all the time, all the open hours, and then more. I was just over there, cleaning out the fryers today before I came over here. Yep. So, but it's part of it's great. I love it. It's where I want to be. It's doing what I want to do. But yeah, right now our occupancy is 49. That's where we're at. We did have outdoor seating when that was available during the duration. Ended in October. So now that we're down to that smaller space, I mean, when we're really busy, Friday nights, Saturdays, I probably have like 6 people on staff. So I have a couple of servers and a couple of guys in the kitchen that work with us as well.
So, I mean, obviously the family aspect of the business, but like when you talked about originally you weren't doing that, you were working, you were an employee doing, you said it was like sales, right?
Well, it was a combination. So it was, worked for a company that did turbo blowers primarily for wastewater treatment facilities. So I traveled for the job, traveled all over the U.S. and went to wastewater plants and did analysis, and then went to engineering firms and trained engineers and gave presentations and lectures on the equipment. So it was sort of a technical sales, if you will. But yeah, that what also led me to be exposed to all these other places that are doing similar things all over the country. And, always liked the idea of going into a town and finding whatever's like local, like what's the fun local thing to do anytime I was traveling. I mean, to try to stay away from the chains, you know what I mean? To try to get exposure to something new. So that was...
And what got, like, again, what got you out of that to open this? Was it just more of like, hey, I'm just tired of traveling and just want to do my own thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was the combination of doing something in the typical manufacturing structure of the hierarchy, and you have all these other people that are brought in different. I mean, it's a large company. They have multiple offices. You have someone that you're working with, and then 3 months later they're gone, and there's no control over it, and so that type of stuff. And then also it was just time to try and do something else. And it was the idea that it would just be more fun. It's a lot more work, so much more. I mean, you know the work that goes into it. Yep. The allure is to be like, oh, I want to do all these things and have all these nice things and go on these vacations, but I want to work Monday through Friday, like 8 to 5, which isn't realistic in our lines of work. But it's worth it.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think when you look at a small business, I think people see the hours of operation and you think like, you just walk in like, oh, CJ's just there and he's cooking burgers and like walks out the door at 9 when it closes or whatever, or 10. It's like, you got to look at all the stuff that's put in. And like, I was here till almost midnight last night painting. Like I've been doing that for about 3 weeks. And
Right.
like nobody's going to see that.
No,
And like, but that's
no.
the stuff that you come in like, oh my God, this looks great. And I'm like, it does. But you got to realize like behind the scenes of small businesses is people, and the people are the ones that just like grind it out, and like you redoing the whole space, and nobody's changing those games out. And if you're changing out or the cabinets, you're changing those out. That's not like a snap your finger and it's done. That's a process.
No.
So it's like, if you just look at that and you're doing that once a month, like that's a few hours of you moving stuff around, and people just walk in like, oh my God, I got a new game. But they don't see the, like, and that's a small example, but like, as you know, like in the whole grand scheme of it, that's something you do here and there, but that just takes time. And that's one aspect of your job. And I think, I guess a question to ask you, and I've asked this to a lot of people that have gone from, employer working for somebody to out on their own. Like, what's the biggest thing you had to overcome, or the biggest learning curve, or something new that like really sticks out that you didn't expect before when you opened?
I guess it would have to be the way the dynamic changes with, like you had said, the idea of what others think of you in that new role that you have. So if you're a business owner that's associated with must be nice, or you've got all this time and money now, you can do these things, or being able to understand that the amount of hours that we put in. So for my wife and I, for example, if on Fridays and Saturdays, we're open from noon till 12:30 a.m. So that's a 12-and-a-half-hour day just being open. So there's another 3 hours associated with that each day. So, I mean, you're talking like we're doing like 54 hours in the course of 4 days, and that's just with the actual restaurant business, right? So a lot of people here can relate to that. But then, like you said, I'm about the arcade cabinets, they're not light. So I'm taking years off my father-in-law's life by having him going around and moving these cabs all around. But you have to do it, and there's an enjoyment to it because, one, they come up for sale every once in a while, so you have to strike when it's available, because it's not like you can run to Walmart and get these things. Yep. And then also there's a direct correlation with people wanting to do something like a little bit different. I mean, if we had a space that allowed for 40 games, you have more leniency on how often they get changed out versus having 12, right? So they say, oh, it's the same games that were in there 6 months ago. But we do that same very thing that you were talking about earlier, where I had NBA Jam in, was during basketball season, and then once basketball season ended, I brought in a Golden Tee game, and now we have NFL Blitz in for football. Yep. So it's doing those things to try to stay relevant and to give some people, something different to do or different to look at when they're there. The other thing that I would say that is different from what we went into it and expected was that you have the best intentions or the best idea, but it just the change that happens into being able to adapt. Like, for example, we had a couple weeks ago, we had an issue with our paperwork filing for the liquor license or tavern license that we have. Yep. So that was something where we're 6 months into operating. Things are really, really doing well about the week before Thanksgiving, or I'm sorry, before Halloween. And what happened with us was that you have these ideas of like what it's going to be, and it wasn't in the beginning. It wasn't the people coming out like we thought. For example, maybe with the college crowd, we'd have more people coming in and playing games and things of that nature. And also the fact that it was a bar, it took us out of the running for birthday parties and for kids. So we've had to do a lot to advertise that we're actually the opposite of that. With the tavern license being kind of disapproved for a time being, that was an eye-opener of what are we going to do? Because, I mean, we feel like we have a quality product, and it was, do we pivot? What are we going to do till we get this straightened out? And thankfully, it happened at a point where we have like a following. Like, it's a small following, but it's still pretty powerful.
Yeah, loyal.
Yeah. Yep. And they want to see it succeed. Not just people, but we've gotten an unbelievable amount of support from other local businesses, like the guys from SIP, the Twisted Carrot, Hobie's have all been like huge proponents and helping us out and like just support, which has been great in a small community to see that. So learning those things was probably the biggest difference and challenge that we've had since we've opened.
Yeah, well, it's, like I said, you think of like the liquor license, and you start getting into all the the red tape and stuff that that you deal with just whether it's government, state, licensing. We have it in our business too, and it's not like the sexy stuff, it's not the fun stuff. It's
right.
Just, but legally, it's like, okay, this has to be done, and you'd much rather be sitting there like serving drinks and chit chatting with the clientele than that. But you go full circle when you look at even down to, hey, doing bookkeeping at night or ordering or just filing and like just cleaning, like all these crazy things that come up, and it's like, someone does have to do that, right? And so now, what about your wife, when she joined or you guys started this? Like, what was her background prior? Did she
nurse? She was a nurse.
Okay, so both done practicing what you're doing.
Yeah. So the other thing is that throughout the years on the side, we've always we've hosted all kinds of parties. Like the whole thing about the art, like I've always gone probably above and beyond and spent more time and money on things that most people wouldn't do. Right. So, I can remember back, we ended up, this was like 8 or 9 years ago. We were looking to do a graduation party for Danielle Talley. I think you.
Oh yeah. I know her very well. Yeah.
So she's an acupuncturist here in town, and also my wife's cousin. So
okay. Awesome.
So she was graduating from acupuncture school and was looking to have a graduation party. So we were looking to get a tent, and then another friend of ours who was going into nursing school, she was looking to have a graduation party later on in the summer. So we ended up I bought this 20 by 30 party tent, and so we've been the people that have hosted parties and like cooked things, and like Jill's a fantastic baker, and we've cooked for years before we ever owned a restaurant, and we liked entertaining, we liked having people around, we liked the fun that's associated with it, the stories afterwards. So but at the same time you have bills and things you have to do. So yes, we both worked at Wyeth decades ago.
Rouse's Point or
yeah,
Chase?
Rouse's Point.
Okay.
And so lifetimes ago we worked there, and we didn't meet there. We met before that, but we got into Wyeth, and like back then that was it. You were set.
Yeah.
Right.
I know a lot of people that work there. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got into Wyeth, you were good. Like that was it. You're going to retire from there, all kinds of money, and then boom, the rug's pulled out from underneath us.
05, 06, yeah.
Yeah. So
07.
We're back to square one, right? So you go from doing really well to back to looking at a minimum wage job, which we did. We went back, we honed our education and went back into it. She went into nursing. I got my engineering degree, went back to school, got a degree in psychology, because I had realized at that point that no matter what I was going to do, there was always going to be people involved. So that idea of like being able to understand and work better in that dynamic was something that I felt to be important. So went back into that. I went into manufacturing and that type of work. I worked around. I did some contracting work and things like that, but it was always the fact of like people commented on, it's so much fun when you guys do this stuff, like these, it's not like they were like wild parties either. They were family parties. There was like a whole range of them. So, and buying the games and like watching movies and doing karaoke and all that stuff was super, super fun and appealing to us. And like, we're super fortunate because a lot of people don't get the opportunity to even try to do something that they've dreamed about, let alone be kind of okay at it, right? So I mean, we're doing okay, and we're presenting something that we feel comfortable in, and we have a safe place for other people to be. So we changed careers drastically, but it also was like not a change in a way because of dealing with new people all the time. With all the kids we get now, it's very comfortable for Jill she worked at Mountain View Pediatrics for years.
Okay.
And then before that, she did family practice. And then before that, she was at a nursing home. So she's seen all ranges of the spectrum of it when, it comes to health and things like that nature. So there's a lot of kids that come in and are like happy to see Jill and she's fantastic with kids. So that's another dynamic that's been great for our business.
No, that's awesome. So, and again, I guess, was it kind of like a decision, like all in, you guys were just gung ho together? Or did one of you have to be talked into it, or was it kind of
no?
Like,
I mean, it's talked into, but like I decided to like not just burn the bridge, to blow up the bridge, right? So I mean, for me personally, I needed to not have that safety net. Like, you need to make this work.
Yep.
You need to make this work.
Feet to the fire.
Yeah, not going to be able to go back to anything. And to be honest with you, it's not something that you can realistically do part-time. Not the amount of stuff that has to go into it. It's a lot. It's a lot, especially when you're starting up and you're learning about all these things, and you have like things go wrong, like you have a refrigerator break, and then you learn about all this stuff. But it was definitely something where Jill got done first, and I think it was back in March or April, and then I followed suit in April because it was a lot on her. This was before we were even open, just trying to get everything open and trying to do everything, and again, your expectations of what you want to do with the business versus what the business is actually going to do and how you have to respond to it's completely different. Mm-hmm. So we were going through all those struggles as well, and then it was just about like, if this is going to work, we got to put everything into it. You know what I mean? So that's where we are, and thankfully, having Luke, our son, who's there working and helping out and being a part of it, it makes it easier. But we're there. We're on our feet the whole entire time, cooking and serving, but it's I got it good. At the same time, like I'm eating a sandwich watching cartoons too. So I mean, I'm not, what I mean? I'm not really like struggling.
Well, I think and that's one thing. You guys play stuff on TV that's also nostalgic, not just the arcade games.
Yeah. So that's the whole, like, I mean, right now we're inundated with Christmas movies. I mean, my wife gets in there and they're like, there's the one TV we have for movies and shows, another TV we have that's hooked up to Spectrum for games, like football games or whatever's going on that people want to see, World Cup, whatever. And then I have another TV where we do trivia. We have it's called Tap TV that we run all the time. It's a free trivia that you download the app on your phone, again, completely free, and then you play not just in the bar but against other bars all over the nation. So then it ranks the person and everything. So yeah, but we have other things on there to where it jogs like memories. That's the whole like thing of being in there, is that we put this stuff on and like someone comes in and they're like, then it jogs their memory, and then they're like, oh, I remember blah, 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 and then they go off on a tangent on this and they see it and they love it.
Well, I was listening to a song the other day, and this probably has happened to you too. You hear like a song you haven't heard in like 15, 20 years, and you know the whole song. Like, I haven't heard this song, and it's just funny how things like clue you in. But same thing with TV. So all of a sudden you'll hear like the intro to a show, and you'll be like, oh my god, I remember all these characters, and like a flashback just comes like way back in the memory bank. Everything just jumps out. But so what game or games is like the holy grail game that you want to get? Do you already have it, or is there one that you really have your eyes on?
No, I mean, some of them I do have, and then there's others that I don't have. So like right now, like a Punch Out or Super Punch Out is like super nostalgic for me. I just love the game. It had the two screens where it had you boxing, you had your character.
Was this Mike Tyson's?
No, see, Mike Tyson's was what went to the home console. So that's where they shrinked it down. Like the Punch Out, it's the same game and same characters, but instead of being like the little dude, you were this drawn in like
yeah, you could see like your shadow, not your shadow, but you could see like the
like the line diagram.
Yeah,
it was green.
It was almost like a ghost.
Yeah, it was almost like a ghost.
Yeah.
And then the Mike Tyson's Punch Out is what was ported to the home consoles. So it had Little Mac, right? It's little Mac.
What was that on? Was that on the Sega? Or
it was on
Nintendo.
Nintendo, yeah.
Okay, so that's your top one right now that you have that you're excited about?
No, that I would like to get. Like, so
you don't have that?
I don't have that. I don't have that one. The 4-player original Gauntlet is another one that I'd like to get. There's some racing games, a couple of I have like one of the ones that's a holy grail for me was that I have in there now is Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. That's like I'm a huge Mortal Kombat fan.
That's such a classic.
Yeah. I'm like so beyond nerdy about it because I built a from scratch. I have at my house a Mortal Kombat 10 arcade cabinet that I put a Xbox One in, and like I got the artwork from a guy from Italy, and I built the whole thing from scratch. And you can play like,
wow,
yeah. So and my son and my mother-in-law, if you go in there right above the Ultimate Mortal Kombat, there's the Mortal Kombat dragon that they painted. So I have that hanging in there. So yeah, that's one of the ones that I'm finally able to acquire after like decades of like trying to get it. So that's one that I'm really proud of. The Centipede cocktail table is super fun.
Wait, which one's that?
So it's the Centipede is one where the little guys come from the top to the bottom. They go left to right. And you have
yes.
And you have like the spiders that go. That's super popular. The bowling game that we just put in, the Silver Strike, that's really like addicting and fun.
But Silver Strike is a newer one?
Yeah, newer. It came out. It's IT Technologies. They do like the Golden Tee and the bags.
Because I've played Golden Tee.
Yeah.
And Golden Tee is very popular around the world. And that always seems like it's in random bars.
Yep.
Not like in a bar, not like a bar restaurant kind of thing, but just be in a bar and it'll be by itself in the corner.
Yep.
And that one's fun.
Yeah.
So that's all like a newer version. They're kind of bringing them back because it still has the graphics of like the old, like kind of the old school graphics a little bit.
Each year they come out with those. It's like Madden for bars, right? So Madden football or whatever. So every year there's a new Golden Tee that's released by this company, and they get more courses. And then they went from the one that I have is a 2005, I think, Golden Tee. And now the ones that they have, they're just like a pedestal that you hook up to like a 50-inch TV or whatever size TV you want, and it has online capabilities, and you can play with a friend or stranger in Florida. It's connected online.
Like the games, and again, I saw a lot of these games secondhand.
Right.
I mean, I saw like could be like mid '90s. They're still around here and there, and like pinball I love, but you get Pac-Man, obviously classic, like NBA Jam I love.
Yep.
NFL Blitz, I think it was like NFL Blitz 2000.
Yep, I have 99, but yeah.
Or maybe it was 99. So I had the same one for N64. It's the exact same game. Like, it's just, but that was always the one where you could like take the height, or you take the snap, take the snap, and you could back up basically all the way to the end zone and throw it 100 yards down the field.
Yeah.
It was kind of reminded me of like arena football.
Yeah.
And everybody's just shooting like pile driving and doing like, body slams. But that was always a fun game. And then you had like I don't know if, like Frogger. I remember playing Frogger. Did you have that at all?
Yeah, I have that. That's kind of the bane of my existence right now. I've had it in the pub. Do
people not play that game?
No, it's not that. Had it in the pub. Opening the day before, got everything working on it. Like it was a chore to get it back up and operating. So I left it on, right? So we open. It's May 13th. It's a Friday the 13th. It's my birthday. That's an opening day for us, right?
Okay.
So leave the Frogger on the night before, come in the next day, and the screen's dead. Nothing I can do, right? So right out the gate, I got to put up the out of order sign. The first day we open, I've got one in there with that on there. So then I pull it out, I bring it home, start working on it, get it fixed, bring it back, fix the visual issue. Then I got an issue with the sound. It's making this screeching sound. It's like terrible. So I had to pull it out again. So I'm trying to bring it back here again relatively soon. But yeah, I have Frogger, bane of my existence at the moment for troubleshooting. But yeah, I have it. It's almost there.
And what's the and I'm gonna get some of these names wrong. Do you have the one with like it's kind of like a spaceship when it shoots from the bottom? Is it Asteroid?
Is that Galaga? So Asteroid is more where you move around. It was a vector. It had the asteroids were coming at you, and you could kind of.
But they were dropping down, and you had to kind of because you could go up and down, but you had to kind of move, and you had to hit them as they're coming down.
Or it could be Space Invaders. Did it speed up?
Space Invaders.
Okay,
Space Invaders. Yeah. Yes, good call. It was like a little spaceship.
Yeah, it's a little missile silo that shoots, and then so interestingly enough, the way that game was made was that it was an error. So the reason that it was. The memory would slow it down. So it was drawing all that stuff on screen. So if you remember back, it was like 30 characters at the top. And as you shoot them, it freed up the draw. So that's why they move faster. It was an error. So it was too much information on the screen that would slow it down. So it wasn't designed.
So the more you shot, the quicker it got.
Yeah. So it was actually the opposite. It was not like they designed it to go faster.
Is that the one where they all kind of come out in like zigzags and they come out and they split and they drop down?
No, that's Galaga that you're thinking, where they come off from the side.
Okay, because I get them all confused.
Yeah. There's like a bunch of them.
They're all shooting spaceship games, but like I said, a lot of the games I played. Some of them I know, but like a lot of them you just play and you're like, I don't know what this is, but it looks cool, and I just never checked the actual name. And do you have Cruise in the World?
No.
The actual like the car racing
No,
game?
I don't have, no. We
So
don't have.
that was another N64 game that we like even to this day. Me and my high school buddies like always talk about. Like it's just. Did you ever play that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Do you have any of those or looking to get any of those or are those kind of too much space?
No, we're looking. So we're looking to try and expand the location that we're at to
cool.
be able to incorporate more of those. It's just the racers. Traditionally, they have with the seats and everything, they take up a lot of space.
But don't they usually come as two?
Yeah, they come as two, but it's the fact that like if you've been in there, it's rectangular, so all of like to have something that's sit down kind of protrude.
Pull out.
Yeah. So we have the shooting games, which you obviously stand back from, right? Like the gun shooters, like Area 51, and I've got Lethal Enforcers 2 in there, and those are popular as well. The thing that we get asked the most about is pinball. That's what the request is about. You know, do you guys have any pinball machines? When are you going to put pinball in? But yeah, that's the other one that we get a lot of, more so than the racing games.
Now, is pinball, is that made by different people? Are there different versions of pinball or is pinball a company?
No, well, pinball machine is like it's just the name of what it is, but it's made by, a lot of them now are Stern. That's the manufacturer.
But that's like so is that like the official brand? Because I played a bunch of pinball games, pinball machines, but do different companies make a version of pinball, or is pinball like...
No, pinball is what it is. So there's pinball, and then there's arcade cabinets, right? So pinball is that rectangular box with the buttons on the side. Have the lights coming up. That's a pinball machine. Manufacturers are Stern, Bally, Gottlieb. There's a bunch of other ones that manufacture it that are manufacturers of pinball machines. So it's a bunch of different companies.
Is there one that like sticks out as like a better quality?
Stern is the industry leader now. A lot of the other ones have fallen off just because they're not cheap. They're not cheap to get. They hold their value from a collector standpoint. So an Adams family that's in good condition from the 90s is probably a $15,000 pinball machine. Yeah, like Theater of Magic.
That was made in the 90s. So
yeah, it was made in the 90s. Made in the 90s, and then the ones now, they come out, we could look it up right now. We could go to their website, and they have like 3 versions of, we'll say, Godzilla that came out.
What's it called? Stern?
Yeah.
I just like, so the amount of, is it STERN?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming Stern, pinball, there we are. So they actually, the pinball company. Oh wait, yeah, Stern, the pinball company. I guess that would say you're the industry leader when you actually have the name as the pinball company. Wow, you're right. So these are newer, like Star Wars pinball system. It's 5,500 or 55. Yeah, 5,500.
Yeah, they have different versions now. So that's like the entry level.
Oh, Godzilla's 11.5.
Yeah, so it's like they're super expensive.
But I'm guessing this is like the machines are probably all the same. I'm guessing just because it's the collectors, like the just the actual name that they're using. Like Godzilla, like it's just.
Well, it's all the lights and the sounds and the way it plays and how you score, and then there's different like.
But it can't be that much different to like make these, so it's got to be down to like the name.
Yeah, it's that.
So like Godzilla over Star Wars, just Godzilla's more in demand than Star Wars, therefore. But like all the stuff they made it out of, it's not like Godzilla's got like gold balls you're hitting.
No, but it's the idea that the things that are going into it, like you have a lot, no pun intended, a lot of moving parts that are like lights and sounds and scoring, and you're combining mechanical and electrical, like it's a whole different dynamic. And then there's just something about it, seeing like 4 or 5 of those pinball machines lined up next to each other. And it's just cool.
Led Zeppelin one.
Yeah, Led Zeppelin one's really good.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Wow, this is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is another one that's like on a comeback. When I was a kid, it was massive, and was actually, I think Ninja Turtles was kind of a flop back in the day. Like originally when it first came out, and I think they said it started to pick up steam, and then like into the 90s. And then when they come up with the movies, probably like 7-8 years ago.
The newer ones,
maybe
yeah.
10 years ago, like Michael Bay.
Yeah, where they're more like
real
and hard edged and everything.
Do you remember the old Ninja Turtle? I'll call them Ninja Turtles. Hate saying the whole thing. The Ninja Turtle went
the cartoon like with
the actual like live people one when they
with the Vanilla Ice one in the second one where it's like Go Ninja Go.
Yeah. Was that when they went to Japan and one of them that was those actually look fairly realistic because I've seen those in the last couple of years like on Netflix or something, and I popped it on, and for being a 30+ year old movie, it actually holds up a little bit.
Yeah, they were. I mean, it was huge. Like, so it started with the cartoon, and then like most things in the '80s, it was a vehicle to sell toys, right? So that's what happens. So you create the toy. How do we sell the toy? We sell the toy through the cartoon.
Yep.
Transformers, GI Joe. That's what it was. New character meant there was a new toy you could go and get at wherever. Like Kenny Drugs would have like all of the Transformers, the GI Joes, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
And I had all of those as a kid.
Yeah. So did I. Like, there's stuff that got damaged throughout the years and whatnot, but it was always like. You trade them off or you sell them in a yard sale, and then next thing you know, you're looking at it,
flipping them, and
you're like, shit, that was worth like $500 now.
Are you like, that's a big thing right now too? Is like the flipping of old stuff that people have no. Like, you go to some person's house and like, I'll grab that's $10, and next thing you know, it's like there's $1,000 worth of, because they the value of those items.
Right.
Do you have any like background knowledge on that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like a lot of the stuff we have out. Like I'm very bad at reselling things. Like I just the nostalgia. Once you have it, it's hard to hold it. Yeah, I want to hold it or like have it there for like. So one of the things that we're going to be like thinking about doing for people is that we've had people who have donated stuff to us because they like the idea of the environment, the food. We've had other people give us stuff on loan where I've got objects in there that are like, this is so and so's, and where'd you get that? And so. For something to have a place, maybe you have a closet full of stuff that you're like, I don't want to do anything with this, but I don't want to sell it to somebody who's just going to make more money on it. But you're like, hey, I can put it in CJ's place, and then when I go down there, it'd be like, hey, that's my Optimus Prime on the.
We have sitting in my basement right now my wife's Nintendo set.
Yeah,
like the original Nintendo with a bunch of games.
Yeah,
and I don't know if we can even play it. I'm
sure you could.
Actually, you'll know this. If I was to take an N64 right now, is there a way to play an N64 on a TV of today's standards?
Sure there is. There's a different cable you have to buy, depending on if you're a purist or not. There could be some lag that's associated with it. But, yeah, you can definitely play it. There's a specific cable that's you connect to the back of the Nintendo 64. It's like, I don't know, $25 on Amazon, and you can play it on your 4K TV. Are
the graphics the same?
I mean, you're gonna see it's gonna look different because your eyes have gotten used to something different over the years. So,
but it's gonna replicate what I saw as a kid.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so it's not gonna like go up and it's not gonna be distorted because it can't. Like,
well, I mean, it could be somewhat worse. I mean, back in the day, you were not playing these on 70-inch TVs, right? I mean, like you'd be baller if you had like a 36-inch CRT, right? Yeah. So, I mean,
absolutely.
That's where that's the difference. Like we were playing at home, my son and I, a couple weeks ago, because we're in the works to do like a collective thing with like Old Soul, where we have like a tournament and we're trying to do some stuff. And we were playing it because we have CRTs at home, and it was like even on the 27-inch CRT we were playing on, I was like, something wrong with this? Well, that's just what it is. Your eyes get used to.
But that would have been like, this would have been like what a CJ would have saw as like 13-year-old kid back
for sure,
in the day.
100%.
Okay, because that's what I'm not looking for, like the N64 of like 1998 to look better than it is now.
Right,
I just want it to look like it used to look.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, because I have not gotten rid of it, so I still have one with all the games and all the and you pull them out, and now you're starting to see them come back around. Like I have that, and now you're seeing what they're selling at. It's insane. Mm-hmm. Something my buddy sent me the other day and was like, $65 for like something that came out 20 years ago for a game console. Yeah. Which back then, I think the games were about $50 back then. So they're pretty expensive. The actual cartridge that you'd pop in. But I have so many of those from back when I was like a teenage, elementary age kid that I'll have to get that cable then, because we have a TV here, so I kind of want, maybe I'll just bring it.
Yeah, I can send you the link. We get some information after this.
Okay.
I'll shoot you in like a Facebook Messenger and be like, this is what you want to get. And I've got it like at the pub right now. Like if you want to see it. And that would
match up to any smart TV.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Okay. You actually just made my day, CJ, because I was like, I've been actually wondering that. I know I could do research on it, but every time I look at it, I'm like, I don't know if this is the right cable, because it. Like,
no, that's what I'm here for. So if you want to stop by the pub, I can help with any kind of like technical stuff with that stuff. But come down, have a burger, and we can talk about how to hook up your old system to your new TV.
I can have a beer now too.
Yeah, have a beer now too. Yep, absolutely.
I'm gonna actually write that down. So, like I said, I learned something new from everybody. So. N64 cord to smart TV. Yeah, that's awesome. So, I guess video games, like growing up, what was your main ones you liked? Was it still arcade games? Or kind of
I played everything. Like I've always been that, I've just been into so many different things. Like growing up, it was all the systems. Like, so as each one came out, we'd get it, right? So I've had and I own every system since the Atari that's come out, and then it was just kind of like playing them and getting involved in them, and there was like a lot of nostalgia with that stuff, and then it's just grown to where like my son and I play Call of Duty Zombies Outbreak together, right? So it's online now on a bigger scale, but we always played stuff, and that was what we would do in the winter, like, you know, maybe go skiing once or twice, but we didn't have the money or the logistics to do that when I was, you know, I'm talking 30 years ago. So that was what we would sit around and play video games. There wasn't the stuff to do. Like, it's the fact that like it's head scratching for some people, but there wasn't the internet, right? So you just had the Nintendo 64.
Yep.
You got to watch whatever was forced on you by channel 3, 5, or 22.
Yep.
Maybe some VCR tapes. That was it. That was your entertainment. That was or you go out and
cassette tape.
Yeah, you go out and get sticks down on the lakeshore and play guns. Like, well, that was it.
Simpler times back then.
Yeah.
I think some of us would choose to go back to that time at times. Just nice quietness. But was there any that really, like, as a kid growing up, was there a system that like really stuck out? Like this would have been, like, for me it was N64.
Yeah, I mean, as well. I mean, there's like great games for the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo. Nintendo 64 is right where things started to get, like, that was the first like 3D, like the 3-dimensional as opposed to just side scrolling, or like what a lot of arcade cabs are now. Like the Mario,
2D
the Mario 64, the F-Zero, the Mario Kart. It was just groundbreaking. You had all this like Zelda. I mean,
when you started having like the sports games come out too, which is massive.
Yep, the sports games. So that and then it just each iteration after that really propelled it. Like, it was the PlayStation, and then it was the Sega Dreamcast, which was a fantastic system, but just, Sega.
When did the Dreamcast come out? That was in the 90s too, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember when the PlayStation 2 came out, that was massive. I remember the one was out, PlayStation 2 came out, and the graphics definitely took a leap up at that point. At least I'm talking back then. So it was like PlayStation 2 and Xbox, the original Xbox, and they came out probably like 2000, 2001. I remember when both of those came out, that was like the next pinnacle up from, the PlayStation 1, the N64, the Dreamcast. I never got into the Nintendo, was it the Cube?
GameCube, yep.
GameCube. Yeah, I never got into that. It was like I stuck with N64, and then I went up to like an Xbox.
Okay.
But the last system I think I got was the Xbox 360. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. That's the precursor to that 360. So I went Xbox 360 because they did the advertising, because Xbox has one less system than Sony. So that was the reason for the 360 portion, was so PlayStation 3 sounds more advanced than Xbox 2, right? Yep. So if you're looking at it and you don't know, so they did the 360 because it was their second system. Then it went Xbox One, and then they're at the Series X now, is for Xbox.
Okay, so they're about 3 systems removed from like the original Xbox.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Xbox, because the original Xbox was like the big bulky black one.
Yeah. It was like a PC/VCR. It was what it looked like. It was huge.
Well, I remember the first time I watched Halo, and I never really got into Halo, but my cousin had it at the time, and I have a friend that's like a nut about it. But the original controller for the Xbox was like made for like you, like a grown human. And I actually, CJ, how tall are you?
On a good day, like 6'6".
6'6". Okay, so like these controllers were made for someone of CJ's size. Me, I'm 5'7". I'm about a foot shorter than him. I needed like the second variation of the controller, the smaller one. The first one, I remember it being like fourth or fifth or sixth grade. I couldn't hold the controller. Like, you almost had to like put it in your lap and play.
Because
my hands weren't big enough to hit all the buttons.
Right.
And I just remember thinking like, this is so dumb, because again, as like a little kid, you're like, I just want to play it. So then you went back to like the three. The N64 with the 3 handles, the joystick in the middle. And but I think my favorites growing up was like Mario Kart, the GoldenEye, and then you like went into like Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Yep.
Those were fun games.
Yep.
So I was more of like a sports guy, but I do remember like the James Bond I really liked. But like Splinter Cell, remember that game?
Yep.
Splinter Cell was pretty cool. That was like all stealthy and stuff, but when you started getting like the Halo like took off, but I just never got into it. But like everybody liked Halo. And
yeah,
I'm assuming they still make variations of Halo now.
I mean it's kind of like it hasn't really recaptured the full like extent. I think like by the time Halo 3 came out, that was like the pinnacle. They've had some good games since then, but it's not really. I mean, there's so much now too. It's hard to like. Call of Duty really took over for that like landscape for that.
And Call of Duty is like actual like real military stuff, right? Am I thinking the right one?
Well, I mean, no. I mean, yeah, yes and no.
The original one wasn't.
Well, yeah, the original like World War II. Yeah. That one was. Now it's like. It's just fast paced. Like the guns are like it is, but it's also super hyped up as far as for like
what do the characters look like? They look like almost
like they look like real military guys, right? Like
okay, so it still kind of
it is that, but it's like super hyped up. Like it's like a Marvel's version of the military type.
Okay,
that's it's really gotten wild.
So like Captain America's in the game.
Yeah, it's Captain America with an M16 running around with hand grenades and stuff.
Yeah, I just remember the first one was like you storm the beach in Normandy in the first scene, and like you could never get by it because there's bullets everywhere.
Yeah. One for Xbox 360 again was like one of those things where you showed people and they were just like, even if that's where I remember growing up, there was that whole stigma of like, how long are you going to play those things for? They're for kids, and now you've got people of all ages.
Leagues.
You got people of all ages like being like, no, I'm not going to be around. I'm going to be playing whatever. The new expansion pack has come out for blah, 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 and I'm going to be home playing that. And they're like 35 years old.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I stopped playing video games, like, basically in college. Like, just life, I just never really stayed with it. But I still, like, when we get together, like, buddies and stuff, we play, like I said, N64, Xbox. We play all the old systems still. 360 is probably the newest system that we play.
Right.
But it's the game we all like grew up playing. Like I was saying about the song thing earlier, you get those games and like the muscle memory just comes back.
Yep.
And like I was saying, Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Like I remember playing that as a kid, and like I get up and I'm just like do, and I still remember. I have no way of explaining it to you. If you give me the controller, I can do the moves that do like the special moves, like the 900. I can still do it. Don't know what it is, but if you put it in, like,
and you can muscle memory, like
I can just feel it, and it's like I can do a Rubik's Cube. But if you ask me how to do a Rubik's Cube, I couldn't tell you. If you just give it to me and let my fingers move, my fingers will just figure it out. And, sometimes it's just better not to think.
Yep.
Like I actually like the Rubik's Cube thing. I'd rather talk to you as I'm doing it to keep my mind off of thinking about the move.
Right.
I just let my fingers just do their thing. But yeah, those were good, and I think the other game was Rock Band, and that came out. There was Guitar Hero, but I didn't really get into it until the Rock Band. I think it was the first Rock Band, to the point now where I still hear songs. I'm like, that's on Rock Band. But like Rock Band came out like 15 plus.
But still, like that's one of the things like that we want to try to incorporate, if we can expand, is like I have the Rock Band set up, and it's so much like, and I have it like, and again, just going above and beyond, the drum set, but setting it up with a 5.1 system. So like again, with this bridging out into another area,
5.1, the surround sound.
Yeah, right? Surround sound. So like at our house, like I've always been huge into games and movies. Like I have a theater that I built. Like so cool. I've got two projectors that I've got a 3D one and a 4K one, and like it's just obnoxious. I just ridiculous. Like you know how you said you stopped playing video games after you got out of college. Well, congratulations, you're an adult. I'm not. I never was able. I was just I kept like I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do here? We're gonna like entertain and have some good food. So. That's where like the passion comes from, and then also just like being able to have like the combination of it, right? So I mean, it just always went hand in hand of like we would be playing Nintendo 64 and we would get like pizza from someplace or like wings or get a burger, and like I grew up at a time where the food distribution process that they currently have now wasn't as like mainstream, right? So what I'm talking about is like vendors providing all of these things. So there comes a time like 30 years ago when you went into a restaurant, whatever restaurant it was, for the most part, a mom and pop place, like they did everything. So like the earliest memories I had of like that are associated with the games, like I grew up in Vermont, and there was a little diner. I believe it was actually called Kay's Diner, but it was always referred to as Bubby's because Bubby Eyrich was the one that owned and ran that, and we would go in there and everything was just like, I don't know, I just remember it being absolutely fantastic, and it was just hamburgers and hot dogs and French fries, diner food. But then there wasn't any other, but like you didn't have access to it. At the same time, like there wasn't the ability to do hand cut French fries at home. Like it just was never the same thing as like dropping them in that deep fryer. So those were the things that we've tried to replicate and make.
So that part's nostalgic for you too, a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's
Okay.
that's the food part. It's the fact of like, especially now where money's tight for people, things are different, and the cost of things are going up, and you want to be able to have fun, and you have to have something in our opinion that's really worth getting you to come to our establishment and saying like, why would I go there if you're getting the same stuff that I can just make myself from Sam's Club? So but also remembering a time where like in my mind it was like, this is how I remember this tasting. Like that was the thing that we would do.
Well, I think the concept though of like from an adult, like I've gone to all these places as adults, and that's like the most fun is going to the I don't know if it was called Barcade, but it was something similar. It was down in Philly, and like you went down, and I've been to a couple times. My brother-in-law lives down there, and we're all adults, and he's older than me, and we just go in there, and it's like you get a beer and you play. But for someone our age, like, and the thing is too, like bar, it depends on going to the bar. Like if you go to a bar with people, like you sit there and talk, but most of the time you just kind of sit there. You just like drink and you chit chat, maybe watch a game on TV, but you don't get up and move and do stuff. That's why these are fun, because you can sit there and all of a sudden like I'm just gonna pop up and go play a couple games, and next thing you know, hours have gone by, but you can have like a fun long day there, and it's like day drinking and you're playing games. And I think the mix of it's cool because it just gives you something extra to do. It's like trivia night when you go get a drink and have trivia, but it's something to entertain you while you're having a drink versus just like sitting at a table. And sometimes that's fun, like sitting at a table and just chilling with people. But it, like you said, if you got to have something different than just going out, having a drink, having food, and just hanging out. And I think that for most people, I think going back to like the simplistic concept of like that's what you grew up doing, that's what you grew up playing. You have the background, you already know how to play the games for the most part. I just think that like that whole thing is an easy, like almost like a low-hanging fruit idea for people, where it's like you almost overlook it, like, oh, that's actually like a great night or a great day or whatever.
Right.
And I think that sometimes people try to have like this like, almost like too intricate of an idea of like things that you have to do. And if you realize like you can just go drink and have fun and play video games with like old school video games, like the amount of pure joy that I'm sure you've seen like middle-aged people have when they're playing these games, because they're all kids, they're big kids, like you said, playing. So like you look out and see a bunch of your peers playing games, you're like, and they get so excited. Like every time I play it, I get excited. Like I'm like, oh my God, we're playing like NFL Blitz. And I'm like, oh my God, I remember this route. And like you just throw it, and the guy picks the guy up and pile drives him on the ground or slams him on the ground.
Right.
And like, it just brings you back as a kid, but like you just have fun because you're almost like giddy for a time. And I think, I don't know, you must see that with people, the patrons that go there?
Yeah, so what we really tried to do was expand upon it. Like we opened up with a menu where we made a couple of ideas and rules or codes to begin with, if you will, where we were going to be like, okay, the experience has been in general, this, whether it's around the area or in other cities, is that if I've gone to a place and they have a really large and extensive menu, it's been the experience that like you see buzzwords like house made, like, so a portion of their items are frozen and it's the same thing. So a really large menu meant that you're going to have a trade-off in most instances where not everything can be done. Like it's just not really feasible from a cost perspective.
Yeah.
So we focused on what went well with what we were doing. Like, having that place with the arcade and thinking like burgers, like pizza, like we're not a pizza place, but we do pizzas, right? So we have pizzas, and it's just one of those things where if you're a kid or whatever, pizza, wings, chicken tenders, like we hand bread all of our stuff, all of our doughs we make ourselves, all of our sauces. Wow. So it had to be that quality thing, because you have to think of it as the fact of like, yes, maybe you're really nostalgic about Blitz, but if you're like, it's some frozen mozzarella stick, you're like, it's not really what I want. I want to have something like fresh. So having the food be there as well incorporates it. And it's also like, yes, there's the arcade cabinets, but I've also talked about how we have like things that are free, like the trivia, decks of cards, Uno, Yahtzee. Like, so you really come in there and we just provide you with like, what kind of entertainment experience are you going to create in our space is really what it comes down to. And then we wanted to be something where it could, like, from a business standpoint, to kind of revitalize downtown or have the downtown experience, is that we wanted to be something that doesn't split an audience, to where, we have people who are like, oh, we were at SIP and then for dinner, and then they come over and have drinks and maybe a dessert at our place. Or the opposite, be like, we're meeting at the Twisted Carrot at 7. We decided to come in here and have a couple of drinks. And the idea is to kind of grow the downtown as well, to where you have people that are frequenting multiple places, so the whole area grows.
Absolutely. That's the best thing, especially when you see like people bounce around from bar to bar or something like that. I think that's, and you might have your favorite bar or whatever, but I think the fun of it is going around like almost like it's like a taste test kind of thing. Like try every little place, go, because everybody's got a different vibe, they got a different experience. Like, and I think, especially, I mean, I'm not in the restaurant industry, but hearing what you're saying with a lot of the, those businesses down there, if that they're like, hey, we're building each other up, that's awesome, because that's what you need. Is that too many people try to, I think, like tear down people in the same industry or the same thing, and it's like you can't, like there's I've heard this line before, like if you want to build like the biggest building in town, like build the biggest building, don't tear other people down. Like
right.
They can build up with you, and like and I think and at the end of the day, even if you're slightly behind somebody, if you look back at where you all came from, there's a massive growth in that whole industry, and that's really what you're trying to ultimately try to achieve. Because someone like a place like Plattsburgh is small, and if everybody has kind of their own little niche and vibe, and it's almost like when you go to like a big city and everybody's got like their little boroughs or little like go take New York City. You have like Chinatown, you have Little Italy, you have all like the a few streets that kind of match that culture. Like we don't have obviously that big of a city, but like you can kind of do that by like restaurants, a perfect thing. When you go to some of these restaurants, they SIP has a way different vibe than Twisted Carrot, but they're similar, but there's a lot of different there's a difference to it. And the same thing if you go to your place, or if you go to like even Olive Ridley's, like there's just, it feels just different, but it's cool. And you kind of, depending on the friends you're with or the group you're with or the crowd you're with, you want to kind of bounce around. And I think the more places you can have downtown, especially when like college is in session, like the college kids, is that like a okay draw for you?
Ironically, no, it's not
really,
but it's sort of because of the fact of like, so interestingly enough, from a sociology like standpoint, it's completely different, because you have a large percentage of college students that are actually attending a physical college experience this year for the first time, if you think of it that way. So so you go from high school to COVID happens, you're doing all of your stuff online, you haven't been a part of that experience. And then we're designed in a way to where, again, with like what's feasible, like given our age and what we can actually do, I can't be up until 3 a.m. at the pub and then open back up again at noon.
Do you think the current college kids are in a almost out of the sweet spot of where that would like this kind of stuff? Like I think every kid would like it, but they're like too young to have the nostalgia, but they're too old to have, like their parents actually probably did do that, but like they weren't introduced to that. Do you think that they're like, would they fit where you think that they would go?
I kind of look at it as far as for what we're offering, and what I've observed is that, so there's a percentage that of college students that go out in the evening after, we'll say 11 or 12 o'clock. Yeah. One of the things that I've learned is when I was in my 20s, I was like, I had a completely different mindset, and so did our friends. Like, so if it was like 11:45 and the place closed at 12, my whole thing was like, we got 15 minutes, let's go. We can go, we can get some food, we can get some drinks, let's go. Let's go. We'll just go. Today's 20-year-old is more conscious about that, also from their own anxiety standpoint. They don't want to go to a place and have dinner when the place is going to close in a half hour, because it makes them feel like they're rushed. It also makes them feel like they're being inconsiderate. So it's a different thought process from the generation that's going on now. So that's part of it. The other thing is that there's also a portion, I think, of, you get preconceived notions, right? So I've got messages from our 1UP account where they're like, do you guys do parties, or can I bring in my 17-year-old? Like, we're no different than any other restaurant when it comes down to that, right? So there's that whole thing of that I didn't realize was challenging the business model, and like, where are the students? Because also it takes time. It takes time for, like, I think it's been a different culture that's been created with try to stay home, try to stay in. You're dealing with Netflix. You have a unlimited amount of entertainment value on your phone. But at the same time, we're starting to get more. We're starting to get some of the college students that are coming out just to have the food and be like, this is a cool place for us to hang out. We're taking selfies down in the bathroom because it looks like the subway station. There's all kinds of like things going on where it just takes time. It takes time in this particular type of town and setting because of the fact of like advertising. It's so hard. I mean, I'm sure you probably deal with this to a certain extent, but again, going back decades, your audience was only in front of like one or two or three things. Nowadays, you have no idea. It'd be like I've taken out ads in papers, I've done radio, but you might not ever go down that avenue. You might not ever open that up and be like, well, I don't get the Press Republican, or I don't go on Facebook, or I'm not on Snapchat.
Well, yeah, and I think, like in my mind as a kid, if I was someone in college, like I think it would be a fun place to go hang out prior to they'll call it the nightlife aspect.
Yeah, well, it's pre-gaming, right?
Yeah,
you pre-game.
Pre-game, but like to me that'd be a fun thing. Like go have a couple drinks and just like play some board games, play some like all these kids that know card games. Like I think it'd just be fun to play like drinking games at the table. I mean, people do it at. It could be a cost thing too. Maybe it's just cheaper to get a 30 rack and just throw it up in your room.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, you're playing Kings or something on the table. And I mean, I guess it. Yeah, it depends. I just think that it would be a cool, like to me, it'd be a cool place as a college kid just to like hang out for a little bit. Like I wouldn't close the bar. I wouldn't close like one up out and down. But like I'd certainly go there and then go off to, I don't even know. I was just gonna say some obsolete bars now, but I'll say it's just Ridley's. They won't go there. But you go to Ridley's, like you go afterwards, Monopole or whatever else is down there.
Right.
So but yeah, I don't know. I think that would be fun. But is now in regards to what you're doing, is there like what's the vision or what's the what do you hope to accomplish future wise with this? Is this kind of like, hey, you obviously talked about getting a bigger space, but
well, expanding the space that we're at. So we're not looking to, like, we have things that we're working on to expand the existing space. So,
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not about moving. Like, I'm not going to be in the situation you're in right now where you're like moving into like,
yeah.
So fortunately enough, we have it to where we've got options. There's things that we have to go through obviously with the city and getting permission for certain things, but we're in the process of expanding the existing location to where it would allow for more seating, for more games.
Nice.
With what we're doing, it's our opinion is that there's a kind of a cap on it for what you want your occupancy to be, right? So right now we're at 49 based off from the primary thing is how many emergency exits you have.
I was going to say fire code and everything else. Yeah.
So we have one technical door to it. So as you get more doors, your occupancy goes up. But at the same time, the way that we've designed the kitchen and what we're doing, we can handle much more than that. But at the same time, we don't want it to be just kind of like an open, like wedding hall type thing. Like, so what we're trying to do is to create that intimate space and to have something that's like, there's a lot going on. Like if you go in there to see all the stuff that we've done from an artwork perspective, decorations, toys, games.
I was gonna say I saw. And it was, like I said, Mortal Kombat, but there's a lot of like Mario. There's a lot of there's a mural that was on the wall that what's on your wall? What's the mural that was done? There's a couple like I know.
We did a Miss Pac-Man and there's a Rampage.
Rampage,
mural.
Yeah. So regarding like, and that was done by you said your son.
Well, no, the Mortal Kombat. Like normal, I think it's 24 by 36 canvas was painted by my son and my mother-in-law. And then I did because the original Rampage, going back to games that I would like to get, I have Rampage World Tour, which was the sequel or 3D version. The original Rampage was just something that was fun to me that it's always stuck out in my mind. So I really like that. We have the high ceilings in there. It's like 10-foot ceilings. So I have a really big canvas to work with and just went with it. Went with like, really, full geeked out. So
you're artistic too.
To a certain degree. I mean, if you keep me in the 8 to 16-bit range, I'm fantastic. But I mean, you wouldn't want me doing a picture of you and your wife and your kids. You know what I mean? I'm not that level. No, by no means. Thankfully, one of my staff members that I have, she is fantastic with some of the stuff. So like our design our newest design for our logo, she's done. So it's really creating like something that's completely different. Like in general, again, going back to this day and age of going out, you want to feel like you're spending your money on something that's different than what you could get at home. And then also something that you feel special and a part of. So for our goal for this was that we just wanted to be like, ideally, if you had friends coming into town and you had 3 places that you wanted to show them in Plattsburgh, that we would be one of those 3. That's it. That's as simple as like, we just want to be good, right? We want to be like, they're really good. Like, doesn't need to be the best, doesn't need to be the greatest. It's just like, they're really, really good. Like, that's what the goal has been since we opened it.
Yeah. And again, I think just from everything I've learned read, researched, heard, it's like you find kind of a niche and just like really run with that, because again, you're not trying to be, every bar's got their own little vibe to it. And like I said, you have a specialty, but like it's the only place you can find it.
Right.
And that's the thing, is even if someone opens up something that's similar, if you're really focused on it and they're dabbling in it, you're still going to typically have the leg up on that. So, now regarding, anything obviously outside of this, but like, comics, cartoons, is that all big stuff when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, for sure. All of it.
So like you kind of blanket it all in as like,
yeah, I didn't fit in with I like the games, the comics, and I'm big in sports and in working out. So it was always like I dabbled in different areas, but it used to be like it was very much sectioned off. Like the gym people were just gym all the time, and then there was just the group that hunted, and then the group that was into sports. And I was like, I liked all this stuff, and then I found myself being like, I don't know, on the outside, because it wasn't like I focused on all of it. I liked too much of it. Yeah. Probably is part of what it was. But I ended up, I was always into those things, like of just once I found something that I liked, I overindulged in it. That's just kind of my MO with it in general.
Now, I guess like from a comic book standpoint, how many of these is there a correlation between comic books and the games on a lot of these, or is there a separation?
Separation. Usually the comic line came from the game.
Okay.
So where movies and TV series, the comic was the launch pad for those. So what you typically would have, you'd have a comic that's where Marvel is right now. Yeah. Marvel and DC, that the springboard was the comic. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it was a hybrid of, then the game came from that. Like you'd have different means of how that worked. But like the original ones, like there's Pac-Man comics, but they came because the Pac-Man game became popular.
I was gonna say, so the Pac-Man game, like Mortal Kombat, what was the origin of that?
That was based off from just the fighting game, like the fighting game.
But
itself.
That started as a game first.
Yeah, started as a game first.
It did? Okay.
Yep.
Because I like now what's the one on is it Netflix? Cobra Kai.
Cobra Kai.
Is that the same? Like is that
lineage wise? That's from Karate Kid. That's
Karate Kid. Okay.
Yeah, that's Karate Kid. It's like
I've never watched it. But
they stayed in the same town and they opened up karate dojos and strip malls and.
But Mr. Miyagi's not there.
Yeah, I mean that I haven't watched that. I don't know. There's like I'm a big fan of most of the stuff, but on some of it, like I'm really excited that like Avatar is coming out, where it's an actual sequel as opposed to like the prequel stuff that's been like inundated for the last 15 years. Well,
speaking of Avatar, is this James Cameron's 3rd movie?
This is the 2nd one.
No, but I mean, he did Titanic, he did this one, and then he did Avatar 1.
No, he's got others in. No, yeah, that's not his, because he did like Terminator 2. Like got
years ago. I mean,
yeah.
But like he's like only done. I think.
Yeah, he's really big into. He did a lot of underwater work. That's where like he's got a passion for like
deep sea diving.
Yeah, deep sea diving and exploring, and then that kind of led way to like you can see it's clearly even just in the trailers right now that's where the Avatar is. It's based off from like
Atlantis kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think those are his last 3 movies.
Yeah,
he doesn't do movies.
No, he doesn't need to. I mean, if your movies start making like $2-3 billion, I mean, you can really pick and choose.
Which is So when does Avatar 2 come out?
16th of December.
Because I remember this is funny. The 3 movies, and I'm going. There's 3 that really pop out to me, but the 3 movies that I remember being hard as hell just to get a ticket to go watch. Titanic was one when that first came out.
Mm-hmm.
I was too young, but I just remember like people were like the only tickets tonight are like a 10 o'clock showing because like everything was booked. Number 2 was the Jim Carrey Grinch movie.
Yep.
Which was packed. And I remember the same thing. I didn't get to watch that until like the third weekend because like you're off of school, but every showing was delayed. And the third was Avatar. And I remember when I went to watch Avatar, I went to Avatar like the second or third weekend of Avatar, and my show was sold out. And I remember when I got there, we were one of the last ones walking in, and I didn't even get to sit with the people that I was with because there were so many people. So like I sat next to somebody, and someone else sat with someone, and someone sat solo or something like that. It was like everybody was all spaced out.
Right.
But that typically doesn't happen with movies, especially nowadays and age. Like if it's released, sometimes they release them right on like a streaming service. So it's like you can go to theaters, but they're just going to put it on whatever. So I'm curious to see how Avatar. I'll go watch it. I'm curious to see how Avatar 2 will live up to the first one because the first one was insane. The amount of people that saw that.
Right.
Isn't that the most selling?
It is now because they re-released it. Like they do these things to kind of like.
But was it based off of like if I go by? Because I know you always talk about like inflation or whatever. Like, hey, based on inflation, is this?
Well, it's Gone with the Wind is the like.
Is that still the top?
Yeah, if you adjust for inflation, yeah, it's Gone with the Wind.
I actually want to see top grossing movies all time.
Or maybe it's Sound of Music, one of those two.
What to watch? Top lifetime grosses. But this might not be adjusted because it has Avatar, Avengers, Endgame. Oh, that beat Titanic too. Then Titanic, Star Wars Episode, whatever 7.
Yeah, Force Awakens.
Yeah, Yeah. Yeah, I don't think this would be adjusted for inflation when you look at some of these. But still, I mean, that's... Yeah, Avatar. Well, Avengers Endgame. That was pretty...
Well,
you went to
Endgame...
Avengers?
Yeah, Endgame was number 1, and then they re-released Avatar like earlier this year, and it retook it over. Like,
it did? Okay.
Yeah. So, like, Marvel will do something similar. They'll have like I don't know, whatever their next Avengers movie will be. They'll release Endgame, and then it'll bump up.
Wasn't Endgame supposed to be the Endgame, like the last one?
No, it can't be. I mean, it's an Endgame for that portion of it. Like that's a good exit ramp, right? For it, if you're like, that was great, that was a great run. You know, it's sort of like the athletes that stay too long, right? So.
Like Brett Favre.
Yeah, or like Jordan going back to the Wizards or whatever. Like so. Okay. Like that, I'm just thinking like there's points. Do you ever watch Breaking Bad?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so like Breaking Bad is a classic, like for both for psychological and then also for storytelling because it does simultaneously two things. There's a point in that series where you see the good guy win, and then you also see that same good guy, that whole cliche line: "If you stay around long enough, you become the villain." Yep. So that was the character,
Walter
right?
White.
Yeah. So when he defeats Gus, right?
Correct. Yep.
When that awesome scene where he blows him up in the nursing home and everything.
Yep.
Yeah. So he won. He won. He was out from the tyranny. Like Gus was the villain. Yeah. Walter White was, the
hero at that point.
Yeah. Who you're pulling for? He was the the guy that you wanted to win or you wanted to see out, and then from that point, like, so you could stop right there and create a whole different show and experience.
Which I think was only like beginning of season 4, end of season 3.
Yeah, so there's like 2 more seasons after that, but they do a great job of like how like a good guy becomes a bad guy. And
I remember towards the end, like you actually started to feel more for like his wife, his child, his Hank brother-in-law.
Yep.
Like you start to actually feel more for those people than for him because, like you said, he really kind of just like spiraled out of control and this like persona overtook him. But
right.
Breaking Bad, that was a hell of a show.
Yeah, it's fantastic. That and the very first season of 24 with Kiefer Sutherland. Have you ever watched that?
I've never seen that. And everybody says you got to watch it because it's 24 hours, but it's literally 24.
Yeah. So like it was like groundbreaking, and the first season is just fantastic. Like it's absolutely like clutching the armchair, like fantastic watch.
But it's actually a full.
Yeah,
day.
well, it's like sped up a little bit, but it's literally 24 hours. Like it's like 55 minutes is the episode, and there's 24 of them, and then like.
But it's all the same day.
Yeah, it's all the same day. It's like 24 hours. Like it's super good.
That's a cool concept. I never watched that. Like the most recent one that I watched was Ozark. Have you ever seen that?
Oh yeah, for sure. We watched that, and like they missed the landing on the ending in my opinion.
So you didn't like the ending?
Not really. I think they weren't like most things. They're like it's a great idea and journey, and then like they don't know how to finish it, and it goes all the way back to like Tolkien with like Lord of the Rings. Like, like how are we gonna overcome this army? And oh yeah, there's a ghost army in a mountain like that. You know what I mean? Like that's like it's unfortunate, but yeah, I enjoyed Ozarks. I felt though that the ending wasn't like as good as it could be.
I remember watching Ozark. The ending felt like a letdown, but then when you really like thought about it, you're like, it's a very practical way to end the series, but it didn't end like on a crescendo. It was kind of like, yeah, like it makes sense, but it just like it didn't hit you. Like I thought the ending of Breaking Bad was very good. Like that last like the episode,
yeah,
and I kind of like went full circle and kind of ended it. But you look at there's a like I find there's a few shows that I like that aren't more in that realm, but like I know Game of Thrones. Did you watch that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Game of
Thrones. I watched up until how many was it?
8.
8. So I ended up watching up till the first episode of season 7, I think it was.
Okay.
Got busy, didn't watch it, and then I was like, I gotta watch it before the last season comes out, and I didn't. And then next thing I know, like the season 8's done, and everybody kind of complained by the ending. So I never actually finished the series. I just did like my eyes. I'm like, I don't have time to watch. Like if it was really, really worth it, I would watch it. But like I had so many people tell me that it was a letdown. I'm like, I just don't feel like even because where I left off, it was very good. Like they blew up King's Landing. Like it's just kind of like got into and then they kind of like I don't even know. I ended up Arya was going down a river or something. That's like kind of like where that's kind of like where I ended in the series. But that I heard that one didn't end great, but I have not seen it. So
yeah, and the thing is that it's funny where from a social standpoint where like they took the directors were like they were going to be able to do a Star Wars trilogy. Like they were going to be leaving the 2 directors of the show. And then they didn't have a script because the dude that wrote the books
hasn't finished writing.
Well, yeah, but really it's on him, right? He's been writing these books for like 50 years. I mean, that's an exact but it's been like 30, like 27, something like that. So for him to not get the book done and everyone's like dumping on the directors and like no one's mad at the author being like, well, why are you working on all this other stuff instead of finishing your story? He's still got 2 more books to write. So it was rushed. Yeah. I haven't rewatched it. That's the only season that I haven't rewatched, but I mean I won't go into it anything with you, but the whole idea was that it would be, it was just rushed. It was just rushed. And like, I don't know if it's that one of those things where you don't have someone else in the room telling you, be like, this isn't feeling right. You know what I mean? There's numerous things like that.
What's a writing thing too? So if the guy, who was the guy that wrote it? Remember his name?
Martin. George
yeah, like Martin 18 different syllables.
MMM, whatever. Yeah. He's
Martin. So I mean, he's what in his 70s now?
Yeah, 80s maybe.
He's an old dude. So like that's the thing. Like he may never even finish the series. Like, and I think that's one of the problems. It's like it's reading Harry Potter and she doesn't finish the last book. I'm like, what the hell happened to the Harry Potter kids? Yeah. Like, and that's, I think I agree when knowing that it was the directors or writers had the ability to finish it off in their mind. Because the other thing is, if he's going to finish it, I'm assuming he's not going to finish it the way that the series finished. So he's going to just write it the way he does.
Well, so the interesting thing is that, so if you read back, there's plenty of information, especially with the internet now. You can't like hide anything. It's there. So he guided them on what his ending was. And they like worked off from that, right? So he basically had told them, this is basically the notes. These are the notes that I'm going to hit. Yeah. So they do it, and then it's received the way it is. So now he's got a scapegoat and be like, well, I had kind of an idea. Like if you find out, here's my idea, and it flops, that gives you a whole other opportunity to rewrite it. And also, he's got like thousands and thousands of pages that he can flesh this whole thing out over 2 more. He's got 2 more books, I believe.
I mean, they're all about 1,000 pages, right?
Yeah. So he's got a lot, but whether he gets it done or not, I don't know. We watched the House of the Dragon, which was
it's a spinoff, right?
Yeah, it's a prequel, which has been like the popular thing for the last 2 decades.
Is that based on Daenerys?
Her lineage, but not her. Like it's
Targaryen.
It's 100. Yeah, it's couple hundred years before that show.
So the other one they're doing that with, I haven't seen it. Yellowstone.
That's I haven't watched that yet either.
So my wife watches it and loves it, but I believe they're doing a prequel and
1883 or something like
They're
that.
different years, but I think there's one that's coming out like 1920 or something like that. Like there's these different, they're jumping around. Fairly big names that are doing it, but they keep going back in time. So, and again, I have not watched the movie, so I'm assuming this is like, you know, going back along the family lineage and how they came to get to where they are in present day. And, you know, but when you look at that, it's a great moneymaker for whoever's doing it, because like, we'll just keep going back in time and almost like going back in history versus the future. But I think, you know, there's certain things like diehards when you take like the Avengers, like people will watch, and I'm not a big I love Spider-Man. I love those growing up. I don't follow comics that much, so like
Right.
the Avengers. Honestly, besides reading my books to my kids that have like all the characters in it, I don't really watch any of those movies. So like when you see like people get so hyped for them, it's like that Star Wars. Like I'm not a Star Wars guy. Nothing against it. It's just I just never got into those movies or books. But like people like love that kind of stuff. And when you see that they come out with like a new superhero movie and it still packs theaters, like they know that people love it, but there's obviously a huge demand for that stuff and people just eat it up or whatever. And I don't know if like when those movies come out, are those already based off of pre-existing comic books? Like Spider-Man, when it came out, at least I'm going to say the first 3 movies with like Tobey Maguire back in like early 2000s, those were based off of the actual comic book. There wasn't like, there was actually story, like the origin story of Spider-Man and how he got his powers and everything else. But do most of those follow original comic book series? Like,
yeah, I mean they
storyline?
they get their beats from that. So like
like they'll get the villain and
like for Thanos and that storyline was directly from the comic, and then they just adapt it to make it, they borrow, and there's other things that happen where this studio doesn't have the rights to this character. So for example, Marvel can use the Hulk in their movies.
Yep.
But Universal owns the rights to the Hulk, so Marvel can't make a movie called Hulk. So that's one of those things where but they can use the character. And then the reason that Spider-Man had done as well as it has is because Sony and Marvel worked together to allow for permissions to say you can use this character and this name in your movie, and in turn you'll help us out with these movies. So it was a collaborative.
So when Marvel came out, like Stan Lee did Spider-Man. So like where did Marvel start, or did Stan Lee just sell it off to Marvel?
He sold it off years like before that. Like, so then Marvel was bought by Disney. So there's just different, like, now you're getting into this point where there used to be smaller markets for an intellectual property, and now they're just being all consumed up by these large corporations.
So like Marvel, like there wasn't like a company called Marvel that made all these superheroes. Like all these superheroes were basically bought up by Marvel or DC.
No. It was Marvel was the comic line, comic and toys. Marvel was
But like Stan Lee like wrote Spider-Man or created Spider-Man.
Well, he was one of, like, there's there for storylines, like it dates back before him. I mean, I'm not an expert by any means in the comic lineage of any of that stuff, but he was the most pronounced name.
So if he created it, he created it under the Marvel name at the time, and he just happened to be the guy doing the storytelling?
Right.
Okay, so Marvel always owned, like he doesn't own Marvel.
He had parts of Marvel, and then he sold out part of his stuff and his characters, and but he's always been the face of it, who drew and created these characters for a Marvel.
Because he was like in the movies and stuff, and
right?
like
Yeah,
little cameos.
Yeah,
and,
little cameos. But it's all Disney. So Disney bought up Marvel. Disney bought up Star Wars, which came with Indiana Jones, like all these other franchises. They have Avatar,
Pirates of the Caribbean, and all that.
all of that. So it's just a massive entertainment thing where like they started making their movies years ago, right? With your animation, 101 Dalmatians and all that.
Wasn't like Pixar Apple?
Yeah,
and then sold off to Disney.
Yep.
Steve, was it ever Apple? Steve Jobs did it.
Steve Jobs.
But there were 2 different companies at the time, right? They sold off Pixar.
Yeah, they sold it off. Yep.
Because when you start like looking at all like how all those like intertwine, it's incredible. Like the holding companies that own so many of these companies that we know, like name brands, but they're part of a larger conglomerate. But yeah, I think that the nostalgia stuff's like, it all just comes back, and you start seeing like they just came out with the I haven't watched it. I really want to watch it, but the Christmas Story, like they redid.
It's a sequel.
It's a sequel, but the same characters.
Right. So there was I haven't seen this, so I didn't realize it because again, going back to the pub and we're playing Christmas music every time we're like or Christmas movies, I should say. And there's a Christmas Story 2, which I didn't even know was a thing. Like there was Christmas Story 2, and now this one's a Christmas story or a story Christmas story.
Is Christmas Story 2 the same characters?
Yeah, I believe so.
Is it?
But that was years ago. So this one is a one where, he's an adult now.
Correct. But it's Peter Billinger or whatever his last name is.
Yeah.
So Christmas Story 2. Christmas Story 2, 2000. Okay, so Christmas Story, that's the original.
Yep.
A Christmas Story 2 came out in 2012, and then A Christmas Story Christmas. I don't think... Yeah, but see, I think the one that came out...
A decade ago?
Yeah, so this is what I was... Yeah, so the one that came out a decade ago was not the same character names, not the same people.
Right.
I believe this one actually has the characters that were in the original back as adults.
Yeah, I know I saw on the promo for it was the same kid was back as an adult.
But I think like flicks back. I think the only one, Peter Billingsley. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ones that came back, but I think like the old man passed away, and I feel like I think they might have used the same house too. I might be wrong on that, but the house is still up. It's like a museum now or whatever.
Right.
You can go check it out. But when you see stuff like that come back, like I get excited for that, even though there are a couple letdowns. Like they came out, and it was different characters, but they came out with like the Sandlot too, which I had I'm such a big Sandlot guy. When I was a kid, that was like such a coming of age movie for my like around the time I was almost the same age as the characters. Then they came out with number 2, and I had like no interest because like sometimes you don't want to ruin the original. Yeah. So you almost like avoid the second one because you're like, listen, if you screw this up, like my adulthood is like really like they did a live version on TV for the Christmas Story a couple years back, and I was like, okay, I'll watch it. I was all excited because they're gonna just do it, but as a live thing. The guy that played and you've seen the movie, like the old man, like they call him the old man. He doesn't have a name. They just call him the old man, and like. He's an old guy, almost to the point where he could be the grandfather. And he's like this rough, like Midwestern guy. The guy in the actual live movie was like this Spanish conquistador, like good looking guy, Spanish. Like I'm like, this isn't the same guy. And I'm like, you completely ruined the movie.
What am I watching? Right.
Yeah, because I want the like grumpy old man. Like that's basically what you're looking for. Like so there's certain things like that. I'm like, it's a storyline, but like sometimes the characters it's hard to replicate because they're such iconic people that it's like. You have that like typecast in your head. It's like it'd be like watching The Office and like Steve Carell's not on. They have some other random dude. I'm like, that's not Michael Scott. Like you need
like they do a Golden Girls remake and it's all dudes. Be like, what are you doing? Like,
they did it with Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
and that was a total flop. And I'm like, I have no problem with like trying to do a female version of it, but I said it's hard to replicate some iconic movies because that's like it's iconic for the movie, not necessarily like who plays it and the iconicness of it.
Well, and being like, again, growing up with it, like I never felt like I didn't think the gender had anything to do with it because I can remember like, Sigourney Weaver in Aliens. Like she was like just a badass. Yeah. Like, and I could just remember that from the 80s. So there was never like you could be whoever.
You don't need a male version.
No, you didn't. No, or like, or Sarah Connor from Terminator 2. Like there was all of these like. Cool things there were these leading ladies that I never really thought one way or another. Like, okay, she's cool in Aliens. Harrison Ford is cool in Indiana Jones. Like, there's not a need to be like whatever. It's just a lack of proper storytelling. I think is what kind of like, or I don't know. I probably, unfortunately, it's probably trending in saying that. Like this demographic likes this more based off from like monetary, right? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, there's certain roles that I'm like, I just want to see that person play it. Like I don't want to like just like make a whole new story, like just which is cool. Like but like some of these old iconic movies, and I'm all for like I don't mind things changing and stuff and trying it out, but like some of these things just turn into flops. Like how much did you build up this? And then it's just like, yeah, but we like again, the Christmas Story. Like I just like that's an old nostalgic like 80s Christmas movie that still like holds up today with jokes and everything else. And like the mom in that and the dad in that are like two of my favorite characters. Like you couldn't replace either of those characters because they're so perfect in like their delivery. Like I almost think you could replace the kids. Like I thought the mom and dad in that movie are like almost are the best part of the movie at times.
Right.
They have such like a supporting role, but like such an iconic role of the family. But no, I think that's like my nostalgia aspect. Like my kids this morning watching Home Alone. Like I'm like, oh, we'll be a little bit late to school. We'll watch Home Alone or daycare or whatever. Like that's certain things just stick out. But like imagine making a Home Alone now with like.
Well, they did more. Like to me, like once Macaulay Culkin wasn't in it, like so Home Alone 1 and 2 are the only
iconic.
Yeah, those are the only ones that I'll watch.
Correct.
They might have like 9 of them total. I haven't seen anything.
Well,
past
number
2.
3 was like this like little kid, like different kid, dark hair, bowl cut, driving around like an RC car. I'm like, I get it. It's a storyline. Someone tries to break in. It's the same storyline. But I'm like, Macaulay Culkin is such an iconic role at the time. And the thing is with that one, number 2. I almost like number 2 better than number 1. Like the story, like the actual like scene in the house is better than number 1. Like that's it's cool. But like number 2, I like it. It's New York City. It's Christmas time. Like, but that's a sequel that actually like held up.
Yeah, for sure.
Very well, And I think that it's hard to do it, but those were made pretty close together. Like those were probably 2 years apart tops.
Yeah, they knew they had something, and it was like. It did well. There's room for Christmas movies because there's just not a lot of them. I mean, you're not going to inundate the market with 30 Christmas movies. Well, I think December.
The last, I could be wrong on this. The last like iconic Christmas movie that I think is like in rotation is Elf, that a lot of people watch. Is there one that's been out since Elf that like?
From a comedy perspective, I don't know. I know the one that Kurt Russell does with Goldie Hawn, where he's as Santa. That one's kind of popular. I can't think of it. I think it's on Netflix. But yeah,
and that's a Christmas movie.
He plays Santa. He's Santa, and she's Mrs. Claus.
Because I'm thinking of like the ones that reoccur, like when you watch like the Christmas Story. I mean, my favorite's Christmas Vacation, right. But like you get the ones that are just like Home Alone. But I think Elf has now gotten in that like mainstream rotation.
Yep.
No, so those are cool. Like, yeah, I just find like some of those old movies, like I like new storylines, and like I think this one would be good because it's the same characters. If you have the same characters, it automatically raises up the clout with the movie for me,
right?
Because it's more believable. But we'll leave that there. CJ, we'll wrap it up there.
Okay.
I don't want to nostalgia you too much. But if anybody wants to find you, where can they find you? When are you open? Anything new and exciting? New games in the rotation coming up?
So we're 22 Brinkerhoff, Plattsburgh, New York. Our open days are Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Thursdays 3 to 10, Friday and Saturday 12 to 12:30, and Sunday 12 to 9. I think we're going to be modifying our hours a little bit when January rolls around, because that's when everybody has kind of good intentions and wants to get to the gym and save some money. So we might be changing that a little bit, but we really like the support that we've been receiving from the community, and just keep in mind that we're kid friendly at all times. Bring the family down for food, drinks, fun. We have a bunch of things to offer, and keep watching the page. We're trying to work through, once we get our actual 2-year license with the state of New York, and then we can move on to these expansion things that we've talked about. But we're grateful for the support we've had. We appreciate being a part of the community. Appreciate this opportunity to come on here and to talk with you. Thank you for that. It's it's gone by fast. If you need more help with setting up the office, I'm good at like picking things up and moving couches and things like that. So
I was gonna say I wasn't making my plan wasn't to make you work on today. What I actually wanted to do was this. And nobody listening to this, none of you guys are going to know any of what I'm pointing at right now, but right next door to where we are now will actually be, I lied, like 2 doors down. This is a bigger place. It's like 3 times the size we came from. So it's a couple doors down is the podcast studio, and I wanted to try it. I mean, we can hear them doing that right now.
Yeah, that's them cutting and stuff.
And that was literally right outside where we were going to record. So, but that space, I wanted to kind of check like the sound and everything, and sound should be good, but that will look much. This is actually painted, so this looks good. But that one will actually be kind of like a fun room.
Okay.
Kind of like I think what you're doing with your restaurant, I kind of want to do with that. Like I kind of want to like make it a fun place, but kind of like my style. And
gotcha.
It would be good. But CJ, this was great. It was nice to meet you. And like I said, I will visit, but I do want to take you up on that N64. I'll message
yeah,
you on that because
yep.
that will make me very happy. That might be a Christmas gift to myself. So
Yeah, nice.
All right, well, that's going to be it. This is episode, what did it be, 212 of the Galen Trombley Show. We're out. Thank you for listening to the Galen Trombley Show. Be sure to subscribe, review, and share the episode. You can follow me on all social platforms at Galen Trombley. Thanks for listening.